welcome back to our Harkla YouTube channel. We are so happy to have you. I'm Rachel.
And I'm Jessica, and we're the Certified Occupational Therapy Assistants with Harkla. And today we're going to give you some tips for children who engage in self-injurious behavior.
The first question that we always want to address when we are thinking about self-injurious behavior is, what's the underlying cause? What is a child trying to communicate to us? What are their actions telling us? So there are a variety of reasons. We're not going to list all of them. We're just going to list the most common ones that we generally see in occupational therapy practice. So the first one is the child could be in fight or flight. They could be having a fight or flight reaction. They could be overstimulated, and participating in self-injurious behavior could be helping them in some way.
The next reason might be because they feel unsafe in their environment, or they feel unsafe with the people who are around them, the adult caregivers or other children. If they don't feel safe in their body, they might engage in that self-injurious behavior as a way to try to regulate or to communicate that they don't feel safe.
The next one is they could be sensory seeking. So they could be craving proprioceptive input, and when they bang their head, they're meeting that need. They could be sensory avoiding, and they could be trying to avoid certain input, and by participating in, biting themselves or banging their head or pulling their hair, that could be kind of blocking out some of that unnecessary or that over-responsive input to them. It's so difficult to pinpoint just one reason.
Yeah. There's another reason, and it could be because they have pain somewhere else in their body, somewhere internally. Maybe they have a stomach ache or they're constipated, so they're going to bite or scratch their arm as a way to try to get rid of that internal pain. Or they could be having pain on their leg because they have a scrape, and so they're going to engage in some self-injurious behavior as a way to try to remedy that pain or to try to make that pain go away.
So remember, when we're talking about behavior, all behavior is communication. And so we want to remember that when a child is, hurting themselves in some way or another, they're likely trying to communicate something to the caregiver, to the professional, to you, whoever you are. They're trying to tell you something, and we need to really take a step back and see if we can figure out what it is they're trying to tell us.
So what does self-injurious behavior look like? The majority of the time, a child engaging in self-injurious behavior is going to look like they're biting themselves, scratching themselves, hitting their head with their hands, or hitting their head on the wall or the floor. It's usually something like that, where they are causing themselves some type of injury.
Sometimes we'll see pulling the hair, pulling on the skin, pinching the skin. Jessica already mentioned biting. From a sensory standpoint, we can think about it as like intense sensory input that they are trying to inflict upon themselves. So really, it can look like anything. And I think what's challenging is for every child, every case, it's going to be so different. So one child, will bang their head with their hand. Another child might bang their head on the wall or on the floor or on another person. And, like I mentioned, it's all communication. So figuring out what the underlying cause is always the first step.
Now, just a quick note, we are not talking about children who are engaging in self-harm, like cutting or trying to, potentially take their life. That's not what we're talking about. We're talking about our children who maybe have sensory processing challenges and maybe don't communicate verbally, and they're engaging in these self-injurious behaviors because of some of those underlying reasons we mentioned, as a way to communicate an unmet need to their caregivers.
So when we are trying to help these kiddos who are engaging in this self-injurious behavior, we're going to kind of go through a roadmap or a checklist of things that, as practitioners, what we would do in a setting to be able to help a client. So we kind of list out these different things that, a little roadmap of what we go through when we're working on this with a child. And the first one, like we've already mentioned multiple times, is identifying the why and figuring out that underlying cause if possible. Are they using it to meet their sensory needs? Are they using it to communicate something? Are they in pain? The first step is to try to identify what the behavior is and why it's happening, and then we can go from there.
The next step is to provide a replacement. So if your child is biting their arm, can we give them something that's safe to chew on, like a chew tube? If they are scratching their body, can we give them some sort of material that they can touch and feel and scratch, like Velcro or wool or something that's going to provide some input to their hands? So we want to kind of just put our sensory goggles on and figure out how we can provide a safe replacement. The other one would be if they're hitting their head, either with their hands or hitting their head on the wall, can we provide some deep pressure input to their head with maybe a swim cap or one of those head massagers, or provide them something that's safe to hit, like a punching bag or a pillow. And it does take some detective work, it takes some trial and error, so you might have to try multiple things in order to find out which one is a good replacement for your child, but also keeping in mind that you have to be consistent with it and you have to help your child learn how to use it when they need it.
Exactly. So kind of going along with that one, the next one that we like to try and to implement is a lot of proprioceptive input. So if you remember back to our sensory episodes or our sensory videos, you know that the proprioceptive system is one of our hidden senses, and it's generally the all-regulating sense. We always say, when in doubt, prope it out, or but first heavy work. So we're going to use that proprioceptive input in order to help organize and calm the nervous system. So like Jessica mentioned, for a kiddo who might be hitting their head, putting a swim cap on to provide that deep pressure input to their head, incorporating big body movement like jumping, crawling, crashing, rolling, using a weighted blanket or a weighted vest, or pushing on the wall, or providing joint compression. So really providing lots of intense proprioceptive input. Sometimes that can help meet that need that the child is seeking. But if you think about a child who's hitting their head, it might look different than a child who's maybe biting their arm, and maybe you want to provide more joint compressions to their arm or compression clothing to help meet that sensory need that they're trying to get by injuring themselves.
Another form of proprioceptive input is going to be blowing and sucking activities. This is going to provide a lot of input to the jaw and the oral structures. So if your child is biting themselves, you can start providing activities throughout the day that require them to blow a cotton ball across the floor or blow bubble mountain. Those blowing and sucking activities can also be very regulating because it is a form of proprioceptive input. The next one is to offer other forms of sensory input that can help your child meet their sensory needs. Oftentimes, children who engage in self-harm might be sensory seekers. They might be seeking out a lot more input to their body. So we can provide them with different types of sensory input, like fast swinging or climbing or crawling, like Rachel mentioned. We can also do some more tactile based activities if they are scratching or biting themselves. So things like brushing the skin with a dry brush, or vibration with one of those handheld vibrating massagers. You can provide that full body tactile input, which could help meet their sensory needs.
The next one is to use communication and meet the child where they're at with their communication level in order to help them possibly verbalize or possibly use a communication device to let us know what's going on with their body. So whether that is using a visual tool or a communication tool like PEC system or an AAC device, or just a simple yes or no, sign language, meet them where they're at with their communication skills and try to communicate with them their needs and identifying sensory strategies that help meet their need. Like, does this make you feel better? Does this make you feel happy? So with a kiddo that I've worked with in the past who hit his head, I would change my communication with him and kind of connect a feeling to the action. And so when he would hit his own head, I would say, oh, that hurts my friend, you know, don't hurt my friend. And that would kind of connect with him. It won't connect with everyone. Sometimes not addressing it is the best way to go about it. But for this kiddo, it connected because he was like, don't hit my friend. Like, oh, like, ouch, okay. And he could connect that with a feeling, because when we hit our friends, you know, that can be painful for them. So really changing and adapting the way that you're communicating with these kiddos might make more of an impact than you think.
Oftentimes when we're using an AAC device and we're using some pictures, maybe with our Gestalt language processors, we can do simple phrases like, I'm angry, or I feel mad, I feel sad, and give them that language for how they're feeling when they're engaging in that self-injurious behavior. Again, this is going to be after we've found out the why, we've discovered what the cause is to the self-injurious behavior, so then we can help the child communicate the feeling they're feeling when they're doing it, and then progress to the strategies like Rachel said.
The next strategy that we can use is to incorporate different environments or different sensory strategies within the environment, using a calming corner or a cozy corner, dimming the lights, changing the environmental sensory input, however that meets the child's needs. If you're in a big room with them and their lights are bright and there's a lot of chaos and you're noticing that the self-injurious behaviors are increasing, maybe transitioning to a smaller room, darker lights. You know, they can lean against the wall, they can sit in a beanbag chair, they can have a little bit more security. So sometimes you need to look at the environment that the child is in and keep track if you're noticing increases in the self-injurious behavior in different environments, and start changing the sensory component of the environment.
Yes, that's a great tip. That might even be at the top of the list, actually, because changing the environment might be one of the first things that you try. So hopefully these tips were helpful. We would love to hear your thoughts in the comments. Let us know if you've used any of these strategies, if you're going to try any of them, if you have any other ideas for other parents and therapists working with our kiddos.
Make sure that you like this video, subscribe if you haven't already. We drop a new YouTube video every Tuesday, and let us know if you have any topics in mind that you'd like to hear us chat more about or go more in depth on. We're happy to meet you where you're at.
Make sure you're following us on Instagram. We are at Harkla_family, as well as at All Things Sensory Podcast. And make sure you listen to the podcast, All Things Sensory. We're on all major podcast platforms.
If anything that we touched on here today was maybe a red flag for you and you are noticing some challenges within your own kiddo, make sure that you seek out professional help, find an occupational therapist, get an evaluation. When in doubt, rule it out, and seek in-person therapy services.
And with that, we will see you next time. Okay, so we're ready. I don't remember how we do this.
Okay, hey, I'm Rachel. Yeah, I don't remember. We'll figure it out. Take one. Okay. Hey, everyone.